our record is right around 500, which is what it's been kind of all year. With that, some good things and some not so good things. Nobody's satisfied with that. That's not our goal. As we do every year, evaluate everything, and try to make the best decisions that we can to move forward, to be more competitive, to have a stronger team in the future. And so Robert and I will talk about that. It'll be a comprehensive course of action, as it always is. I don't see the process being really any different, but we need to have better results, and that's really the bottom line.
Hey, what's up, everybody? That was Bill Belichick on Monday speaking to the media about that meeting to take place with Robert Kraft that he anticipated. That was brought to you by Shaw's, perfecting the art of fresh. Now that meeting has taken place, we confirmed. And from that meeting, the Patriots are charting a course for 2023. Bill Belichick will very much be in place, and the two sides are going to move forward with anticipation of offensive changes afoot along the coaching staff. Let's bring in Phil Perry and Matt Cassel to get into that and so much more. This is Matt Cassel. We'll have Phil Perry dropping in later, parachuting in, rappelling in to join us with his opinions on this. But Matt, there was a lot of speculation as to how the meeting between Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick might go. Would there be a stalemate? Would there be resistance on the part of Bill to saying, wasn't that great? I learned Wednesday, it went fine. No disagreement on what ailed the team, and Bill, amenable to making changes, told no persuasion necessary on the part of Robert Kraft, nor did Bill sit there and say, I screwed up. What's your reaction to this moving forward? It's kind of a relief, no?
Yeah, it's a relief, but you also Bill Belichick understands the nature of what took place this year. And obviously he went out on a limb when he hired Matt Patricia and Joe Judge to take over offensive play calling duties. But again, when you look at what happened and what took place before that, over 14 months, I mean, he lost his OC, he lost his quarterback coach, he lost his longtime running back coach, he lost his offensive line coach, and he also lost Ernie Adams. I mean, they were bare when it came into this offseason. And when Josh McDaniels left, took some of the assistants with him. So his back was against the wall in terms of hiring. And if you know Bill Belichick, he's probably looking at the situation, and he probably values familiarity with his scheme and with his offense more so than the unknown. Because when you look externally to any of these offensive coordinators out there, whether it's in the Sean McVay tree or Kyle Shanahan tree, which a lot of people are gravitating to, right? Sometimes that can bring its own challenges because it's completely different terminology. It's like speaking different languages. And so, and I understand what you're saying. They hired a guy that has been on defense for the last 14 years.
And then they changed the offense. So it's not even like there was a familiarity with the offense that they had involved. I get all the people who went out personally.
Right.
But Bill has always been known, you especially, as an individual who was put in a position to succeed. Limited experience in college, found a way to make sure that you were developed to a point where you could become a Pro Bowl quarterback, a franchise quarterback for a team.
Right.
I just look at it and like I'm still mystified that someone who was so good at putting people in positions to succeed for so long put somebody in a position to fail just for the comfort level. That's what I'm
right. And I think that it's also goes back to Bill's history, right? Since 2000, since taking over the Patriots, he's hired one external coordinator, and that was the guy from Tampa Bay. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he quit before the season.
Dean Pease was there. Greg Schiano, but there was familiarity with Greg Schiano as well.
Right. There's familiarity there, but he never coached underneath him on that staff, and he hired him, and he quit before season. So his history would tell you that's what he was going to do. Look internally, see if he has guys that can fill that void. And unfortunately, it backfired. It was one of those where he rolled the dice, and they didn't have success this year at the quarterback position. Offensively, it seemed like they were out of sorts, and there was a myriad of issues when you look at this season in terms of the offensive line play. Trent Brown played his worst season in the last 6 years. Isaiah Wynn had his worst season, which is hard to fathom because he's had some bad seasons before, but he had his worst season of his entire career. So those moving parts there, and then also you'd go out the wide receiver position. They had the only man that was consistent on the outside was Jacoby Myers, and that's been consistent with the last few seasons. Whereas Devontae Parker, he was able to make some splash plays. Kendrick Bourne, it was up and down. He was in the doghouse. He wasn't in the doghouse. Nelson Aguilar, another guy that you have high expectations for, but it didn't step up and rise to the occasion. So there was a lot of issues surrounding this offense, the play of the offense, the personnel of the offense that also helped add to the issue.
100%. But that goes back to the buck stopping with casting a wider net. And I think that's probably going to be important to the Patriots this offseason. Comfort is important. Relationships are important. The ability to work with other people are important, knowing their strengths. And Bill has always said this, Matt. When someone says that's a good play or that's a good football player or he can do X, Y, and Z, and I look at it, Bill has said this, and I look at it and I don't agree with that, then I lose faith in that person's definition of what good is. That is in so many ways why Bill continually goes back to the advice of folks who understand what his definition of good is. That's why Devin McCourty goes in the first round or Gerard Mayo goes 10th when they were both ticketed to go later. Bill's definition of good is different. That comfort with being able to do a mind meld with the people around you is vital. But I think this year, the comfort that Bill coveted with the people he worked with came at the expense of doing what was best for the football team. And I'm sure he gets that. And it'll be interesting to see who does get hired, how wide the net is cast when we do hear who's coming in for interviews. Are you intrigued by that at all? Or is it going to be the same? Okay, is there any way 6 degrees of separation from Bill? How does this guy fit into the Patriots tree?
Right. And that's the interesting part about this offseason, because this is really, I would say, his first time in which he's had to expand on how he thinks about the offense and who is the best candidate versus the guy that you're comfortable with and familiar with. Because I think sometimes as coaches, particularly head coaches, you're not only coaching the players, but you're also coaching your coaching staff. And that familiarity works hand in hand. And that's why I think he's always had that approach. He's been able to build some of these young guys like Josh McDaniels, Brian Daboll, whoever it might be, up through his system. And he also is able to communicate with those guys. Because when you look externally to different schemes, different system, there's, like I said, it's different terminology. They might be teaching the same exact play, but they might be using completely different methods in which to teach that and show these guys what to do. So being on the same page is really important. Now, I don't know how important it would be for him to step outside of that box and say, look, if I'm just going to be defense, then I'm going to be defense, and you're going to let somebody else run the offense, because that's really what you get to when you hire somebody externally. And then what guys are they going to bring in as part of their coaching staff to help fulfill that guy, to set him up to be successful so that they can teach? Because so much of coaching, as you well know, is making your players understand, putting them in the best position, but you've got to be able to teach what you want to get done on every given play. And you need everybody, including the running back room, the wide receiver room, the quarterback room, to be on the same page. So you're talking about a complete overhaul on offense.
Yes, I got to jump in. Which sucks. You said something that prompted me. I wanted to reply to, because if you do bring somebody in with a new language, you do bring somebody in with different expectations of how the offensive line play is going to be coached, not drastically to reinvent what Dante put in and what Bill loves. But that means another change in the language. That means another change in the terminology. That might mean, again, and this is why so much of 2022 was pissing up a rope, literally, well, not literally, the same idea. Nothing got done with all that wide zone stuff that they spent the summer working on. By the end of the year, they were a gap running team like they were the year before. So that's the danger you're talking about. You end up pissing up a rope for months trying to put in new language and new ideas, and then find, okay, well, now it's the third year for Mac Jones, and we still haven't gotten him into a position where we're trampolining forward. So what does the hire need to fit first? Quarterback, scheme, or comfort zone for Bill?
Well, I think it's got to be, you've got to address first and foremost the quarterback position. If he's your guy moving forward, how are we going to make him most successful? And so that part of that is the scheme. How does this player fit into the scheme that they run? Is he able to do that? Like, there's certain schemes that, look, they want to do a lot of pocket movement. They want the zone read has become a lot bigger with some of these guys, especially these younger guys. Can they incorporate that, or is this an offense and this a player that you don't see like that's a very good fit? I think it's got to be a system.
Moving pocket read option type of team?
With Mac Jones, I mean, he is a pocket passer. That's what he is. That's what he does really well. He processes. It's the pre-snap indicators that he can recognize. The accuracy is one of those things, but it's going to be timing. The move of the pocket, he can definitely run the boot game and all that stuff, but I don't think you're going to major in things like that. And then you also have to take into account, you've got backs like Ramondre Stevenson that you want to feature a guy like that. He's a special back. And when you have the interior offensive line set up the way that they do, you're going to be able to run the football. So then at the same time, you look at the outside. If you lose Jacoby Myers, I mean, this is an interesting wide receiver room, because really you have Devontae Parker, Tyquan Thornton, and Kendrick Bourne that are still there, because I don't think Nelson Aguilar will be here next year. And then you've got Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, who, again, we're still waiting for Jonnu Smith to arrive, but we're not holding our breath on that one. So you have to look at the scheme in which they run. Can they put this guy in a better position to succeed? What do they do really well? Is it the quick game?
Stick with the scheme?
Should they stick with the scheme? And those are questions.
Spend time on, or should they revert back to the other one just to?
Right. Well, that's what's going to happen. And we talked about this outside zone. We talked about it a lot throughout the offseason as we went into the season. And the interesting part about every offseason, I've said this before, is you always go into an offseason with ideas and you try different plays, try different schemes that you might think that your offensive group will do really well during the season, but it doesn't always come to fruition. Guys just don't always get it, or maybe you don't have the personnel to execute it at a really high level, so then you scratch it. But that's year in, year out. For every 14 years that I was in the league, there was stuff that we experimented with in the offseason, different types, whether it's outside zone, inside.
What's the best thing for Mac? What's the best looking offense?
The best offense for Mac Jones really is one in which he can use his strength, which is the mental side of his game, the processing, moving wide receivers from one side of the field to the other to give him pre-snap indicators. And it's really more of the possession passing game, because he doesn't have an elite arm strength, but you're going to have to take shots, and it's play action, but it's in the confinements of the pocket, right? You're going to do a little bit of movement with him, but really you have to have a solid offensive line to be able to let him get up there and go through his reads. It's progression reads. It's that intermediate passing game, and then supplement that with some play action down the field and some quick game. But that to me would be the best offense for him to operate in. What do you think?
I totally understand why there was appeal to the Denver Broncos style of the 90s. You know, Jake Plummer was not running around like a freak, nor was Kyle Orton. Let's bring Phil in now and get his thoughts on this too. Hi, Guy.
What's up?
Hey, when you look at the Patriots' next offensive coordinator hire, which we're presuming will happen, again, there won't be great announcements of Matt Patricia being dispatched, or we might not even hear that an offensive coordinator was hired. We'll just have to presume that that's what that new individual on the sidelines is doing. What's the priority? Should it be finding somebody who can work well with Mac? Should it be finding somebody whose scheme is going to fit what the Patriots have in place? Should it be somebody who brings in their own scheme that dovetails neatly with what the Patriots just spent 2022 doing? Or should it be somebody that Bill gets along with and likes?
I think that last point is one that you're unfortunately going to have to accept if you don't love it. That's just how he's operated for a long, long time. I'm not sure that's going to change. Now, I do think, there is the opportunity or the potential for Bill Belichick to sort of open himself up more to potentially like a new set of people, or potentially trust someone new, because we saw and we're seeing that style has its limitations when you are losing coaches every single year. So if you are dead set on having only people that you would trust your life with on your coaching staff, if they do a good job and they leave, the cupboard's going to be pretty bare pretty quickly. And I feel like that's sort of where we've gotten to.
So what's the priority for the hire?
The
Quarterback
priority
scheme.
for the hire, the
easy to get
priority
along
for the
with.
hire, and this is why Bill O'Brien, to me, should be the front runner, is making sure that you put Mac Jones in the best position to succeed. Meaning what Matt just said about utilizing his strengths, having answers. You know, that's something that's come up time and again with players that I've spoken to over the course of the last week or so. Having answers for problems that come up and having somebody who is experienced in answering those problems that come up and giving players the tools that they need in real time.
So answers for Mac when Mac is confused or Mac is frustrated or Mac wants to know the why. He needs somebody who can, yeah, this is why. Because remember, he actually indicated, I don't get satisfactory answers as to the why sometimes.
Well, I
there has
think
to be
that
a mind meld.
I think that's part of it. I think it's really truly answers to the test, i.e., like football answers. Hey, when they are bringing pressure from here, we have this ability to get into X play, which is going to hit them because of how they've set up their defense. I don't think they had enough of that last year.
Matt,
Yes,
you're
I
nodding
am.
on that.
Yeah, I'm saying what I think Phil's exactly what he's saying right now is at the line of scrimmage, when something doesn't look right, giving him the ability to check out of it, giving him more range at the line of scrimmage, because we saw that as the year went on, that he was making adjustments at the line of scrimmage, whether it was protection or signaling routes. And that's, again, something that he recognizes and processes really well at the line of scrimmage. And it's something that can be a benefit for this offense moving forward if you get the right scheme in place, because there are schemes out there that they're just going to call and run what they do and believe that that's the best option for them. But then there's other offenses that give you more privileges at the line of scrimmage for the quarterback position. And I think for Mac Jones and what most of his strengths are, that is something that would help him moving forward.
He wants privileges. Phil, you reported it. The Patriots were not supposed to audible during training camp. And Matt told us, and Mac Jones indicated, that's not how it worked prior. When I got up and I saw a terrible look, I'm getting out of that. I'm not just standing here. Again, I'm going to use the phrase, pissing up a rope. 2022, that should have been the team slogan. They made no progress. Is the Patriots' job, Phil, an attractive one for an established coach?
I think it is, depending on the coach. If you're Bill O'Brien, I would say you're established. But I would also say this is an attractive job because you're from here. You have a previously existing, albeit brief, relationship with the quarterback. It's a quarterback that fits your system, which is, the Patriot system, probably with a few tweaks, who would understand your language and would be able to hit the ground running. It also gets you back into the NFL door. And so for all of those reasons, I would assume Bill O'Brien would be interested in coming back for a job like this. It's an attractive job, I would say, for Chad O'Shea because it gets him back to that offensive coordinator role. I would say it's not an attractive job for somebody like Cliff Kingsbury, who's going to be making a lot of money over the next several years. It's already guaranteed to him. And why would he want to come to New England from Arizona, make less, although he's still getting paid by Arizona, have probably a not all that significant title and work 20 hours a day? That doesn't sound all that appealing to me. So it depends on the person.
Is it an attractive job, Matt, in terms of looking at Mac Jones and understanding the relative skills around the NFL for the most successful teams at quarterback don't really fit Mac? And going someplace, again, established coach, you don't want to go someplace and go 8-9 and have your quarterback throw for 3,200 yards. You're looking at an offensive line in disarray, some question marks at wide receiver, but it's a good defense on the other side. You can win football games here. So
you can win right.
Go ahead, baby.
You can win football games here. There's no doubt. They've got a very good defense on that side of the ball, which gives you some comfort as an offensive coordinator, knowing that they're going to keep you in ball games consistently. But at the same time, like you said, when you're looking at it from a personnel standpoint, there's a lot of question marks. The two tackles, for instance, like you said, the wide receiver position. Also, if Jacoby Myers leaves, it even becomes more dire in terms of needing to go and draft somebody probably, or going and having to make a trade. So there's not, from a personnel standpoint, I don't think it's the most attractive job unless they make some offseason changes there. And then Mac Jones, I think there's still a lot of questions surrounding Mac Jones. And we saw it throughout the course of the year. He battled, he went through adversity. I know the circumstances were, but he doesn't have the strongest arm. He doesn't have that elite skill set that you see in some of these guys. And so you have to be able to cater to what he does really well. And that might have limitations for what type of offense you want to run.
You also better figure out a way to use Jonnu Smith because he ain't going anywhere. Phil, yes.
Matt, don't coaches really like it when players just do what they're told? Meaning, we're not interested in the playground stuff. I know that there are coaches who are writing a lot of success to guys like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. But I think that style, if you're not great, if you're not on that track to be a Hall of Famer someday, can't that be and you'd correct me if I'm wrong, but can't it be, even if it bails you out as a coach sometimes, can it also be a little maddening as a coach sometimes because you're spending ungodly amounts of time putting these game plans together only to have the guy behind center catch the football off the shotgun snap and then just run around like he's on the cement, playground in 5th grade, just making things happen. I'm curious as to your perspective on that.
So wait a minute. Let me just interject. So the Patriots are a good joint because at least the kid's going to paint by the numbers.
So I think that's why Kyle Shanahan, for instance, reportedly was really interested in Mac Jones and has been pretty complimentary of Mac Jones even after that draft has come and gone, is because he was viewed as the type of quarterback that would do what Kyle
paint by numbers. Like you tell the kid to stop throwing picks, he stops throwing picks. It's like that.
I think it's every offensive coordinator's desire to be able to play within the system. They always talk about that. But then again, as we've seen the QB position evolve, more and more coordinators are accepting of these guys being able to create their playmaking ability, whether it's Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. I know we could talk about the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. Every one of those guys have that type of ability. But when you want somebody to do the exact same thing that you've been coached in the room, that's always a positive. But then at the same time, the other side of that is they can't create when you need a big play, and they can't extend the drive with their legs or do something like that. And you can't be as dynamic in terms of the boots, the RPOs, the move the pocket plays, because that's just something that's not suitable to their game. So there's give and take in every way. But of course, the coordinator wants you to play within the system and know how to execute the plays that are being installed. But sometimes it's about creating, and those are usually when big plays occur.
And the thing is, they quit on him too early, and that's what a player has to get out of the habit, whether it's Josh Allen or Justin Fields, who will improve as it goes along. And Matt, you probably had it too because you could scoot. I'm not seeing anything here. I'm out of here.
Well, that's the other part is when you first get in there, I was running around with my head cut off a lot, especially early on in my career, because I dropped back and I thought I saw something, but I didn't really see it. And I would rely on my legs to get me out of trouble. And there would be frustration there. Like you're talking about, Phil, like Josh McDaniels would be like, bud, just hang back in there a split second longer. The end cut came open right behind that Sam linebacker. And I was like, yeah, I just wasn't feeling that right there. So you've got to break some of those tendencies, because the hard part is to get that athlete sometimes out of himself and say, look, first and foremost, you got to play the quarterback position. You got to become really good inside the pocket, become a passer first. And then when plays do break down, or when something isn't coming open, then that's when you can create. But first, you got to play within the confines of the system and how we operate.
Be an interesting 2 weeks or so. I'm guessing 2 weeks as we approach the Super Bowl, and hirings need to be made, and we'll probably, God willing, start to get murmurs and tidbits dropped as to who's coming in for interviews. We'll be kicking all that around and really interrogating the idea of each one as we proceed. Now, coming up after the break, we've hit you with plenty of that. Let's get into a little bit of this weekend's games and some of the awards. I had to fill out my AP All-Pro awards. See you in a minute. Here we go. AP awards at the end of the season. I get the opportunity to be one of 50 voters to vote for All Pros and the year-end awards. They put a new deal out there for the big awards. Top 5 for MVP, top 3 for Coach of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, and so on, and also Assistant Coach of the Year. So I want to roll through some of these items. They don't want us to give up who we voted for, but I had Coach of the Year was a tough one for me. Among the guys who I could make a case for, Sirianni with the Eagles, Pete Carroll with the Seahawks, and Kyle Shanahan with the Niners. That was my top three. I'm not revealing order. There's more guys out there, though, Matthew.
Yes, there are. And one guy that stands out to me is Brian Daboll and what he did with the Giants this season. I thought this, for an organization that was in disarray, for him to come in and be able to turn this organization around, make the playoffs in his first full season, especially considering there's a lot of question marks with Daniel Jones, the health of Saquon Barkley, the defense, and all the overhaul that they did. I think he's got to be a candidate.
Philly?
I'm with Matt. Brian Daboll would be my vote to get Daniel Jones to play the way that he did, to not screw it up. Only 5 picks all year long for a guy that a lot of people had a lot of questions about coming into this year. I like Brian Daboll. The reason why I would not go, although Kyle Shanahan to me is an interesting choice too, Tom, with the whole Brock Purdy quarterback situation.
Yep.
That team is so turbocharged by what it has defensively. And I'm just not willing to give him a lot of credit for that. That might just be a me thing, but he's the head coach. He's an offensive guy. The defense is run by other people.
That's the hard part. I was going to say that's the hard part about this one, is because a lot of times these head coaches get punished for having too much success, right? The job that Andy Reid did this year, I mean, getting the number 1 overall seed, but also losing Tyreek Hill and revamping his entire wide receiver staff. But Patrick Mahomes goes out and has one of the best years of his entire career. So it's always interesting when you get to the head coaching or coach of the year, just because of that reason.
We also have assistant coach of the year. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I actually went into this because I found it really interesting. I put number 2. Well, I'm not supposed to get whatever. Assistant coach, who cares? I went DeMeco Ryans Niners. Jeff,
I like that.
Stoutland. Jeff Stoutland. Anybody know who he is?
Offensive line coach for the Philadelphia Eagles.
And then I went big bad Ben Johnson of the.
He's the Detroit Lions OC.
Detroit Lions.
What do you think?
I like it. Do they really give out that award?
Yes, they do.
Oh,
yes,
wow.
They do.
Give it to Stoutland. Give it to Stoutland. That's a creative running game with a running quarterback and a bunch of dudes on that offensive line who are just, I mean, they are individually talented. So,
they're studs.
A handful of offensive line coaches out there do a good job with those guys, but he's regarded as one of the best in the game and has been for a long time.
So your MVP then, going back then, I'll tell you that I put Jalen Hurts at number 2.
I like that.
13 rushing touchdowns, and they were 14-1 when he started.
Matt, would you put Jalen Hurts ahead of Josh Allen?
Yes, I would, just based on his performance this year and what he did for this team. Because again, it was not just in the passing game, which he honestly made so many strides this year, but it was what he did in the run game. I mean, he was dominant with the ball in his hand as a ball carrier. So I would put him ahead of Josh Allen, just because when you look at Josh Allen in the entirety of the season, while he had an outstanding season, he had those magical plays, he also had a lot of turnovers. And the only losses that they had this year were because he had multiple turnovers in those games. And you saw that as a consistent theme throughout the course of the year.
I would think about Allen at 2 behind Mahomes. I would also think about Joe Burrow at 2, because I think both those guys don't have or haven't had this year quite as much around them as Jalen Hurts did, right? One of the best offensive lines, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Josh Allen has Stephon Diggs, who's a great player. His offensive line is, generally speaking, not very good. And Joe Burrow went a huge chunk of the season without Jamar Chase, and his offensive line was horrible for the first half of the year.
Well,
so I just think
2, 3, and 4.
Those guys elevate. They
2, 3,
elevate.
and 4. We're on the same page. I'm not yelling at you.
Yeah,
you know that George Kittle still ends up being the second team All-Pro at tight end? Just a note. I'm not going to have a debate about it. Oh, okay. Let's talk. There's too many wide receivers, but here's my wideouts. Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs were my first teamers. Second teamers, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Can I just say I'm happy that it only took us about 3.5 minutes for you just to start divulging all of your picks when you said at the top of this.
You told us you weren't gonna do that, but you just told us exactly what you want.
I am.
You're evolving.
I'm a vault. And I did give 3 patriotic votes. Kyle Duggar, the guy generated 3 touchdowns, spectacular hitter. getting better in coverage, but I just think game impact week in and week out, he ended up being one of my 2 second-team safeties. Marcus Jones was actually a layup as a punt returner. You're going to bring up a punt return and win a game with it and also lead the league in average? Zing Zang, that's you.
Yep,
and
that's you.
I think I had another one. Oh, Judon, second team edge. Judon, second team edge with old Mad Max Crosby, who got my 3rd vote for Defensive Player of the Year.
First vote going to Nick Bosa, I'm guessing.
Not saying I don't want to be. I'm a vault.
Yep.
I think those Patriots selections are fair. I figured you would have Jake Bailey just locked in as an all-pro punter for the next 5 years, but that train has come off the tracks pretty quickly.
I got my 2024 comeback player of the year. It's Jake Bailey. Offensive rookie, I also went off the board. I'm not saying whether or not I put him at number 1, but there was a Baltimore Ravens center who was in his first year. He was Pro Bowl level, almost all pro level. Not going to tell you, but I didn't, okay, Tyler Linderbaum. Linderbaum, get in there. Clear those bricks out.
What about Garrett Wilson for the Jets?
That's what I was going to say. Garrett Wilson had a tremendous year.
He did. That's nice.
Yeah.
Over 1,000 yards with Zach Wilson playing a lot of quarterback for you. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
it was.
Pretty impressive.
Yep. And I think Brock had a pretty good season too. All right.
He did, but he only played 6 games.
I know. That's why he didn't get nothing.
I know.
Throw it up there, John. Here's your weekend matchups. Seahawks and Geno Smith. Do they come to a skidding stop against the Niners? Don't let the Seahawks win.
Don't let the Seahawks win. It would be remarkable. But the interesting part about this game is you got Geno Smith, his story from this year, probably the comeback player of the year versus Brock Purdy. Both these guys making their first starts in the playoffs. Obviously, different paths to get there. But when you look at this game, I mean, San Francisco is just so much more talented on both sides of the ball.
Checkmark Niners. Philly?
I'm going to go with the Niners as well. Although it'll be interesting to see if old Pete Carroll has something cooked up for Brock Purdy, makes him look like a rookie in his first.
I think the Chargers are going to get ushered out by Jacksonville.
Do you? The interesting part about the Chargers for me is they're getting healthier. You know, Joey Bosa's coming back. Derwin James has missed some time. He'll be back. Their left tackle will be coming back. And now that they have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, I know Mike Williams got hurt and banged up in that last game, which still, to me, I don't know why he's playing in that last game. But I think the Chargers have a good opportunity to go down to Jacksonville and beat this team.
I've really watched about 17 seasons of the Chargers blowing off their own foot in the playoffs. That's why. Whether it's LaDainian Tomlinson or Phillip Rivers or that kicker, the blonde-headed dude, Kading, or whatever his name was, just they can't win in the playoffs, Phil.
Yeah, and I got to say, the way Brandon Staley handled that game last week with all of his guys playing and then a significant portion of them getting hurt, it just made me think that this guy might not be built for postseason football. Whereas we know Doug Peterson has had success there before. So I'm liking this young Jaguars team. It's just been fun for me to watch. And I know he's a generational prospect, right, Trevor Lawrence, but it has been interesting to see just what one change at coach and a couple pieces put in around him in free agency, like what a change like that can do for a young player.
There are times when I watch Trevor Lawrence and I'm like, I get why he went number 1, but he's never going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. All right.
He still misses. He does.
Yeah. Josh Allen and the Bills win easily. I think the Bengals take care of business late on Sunday. There's 2 games we want to discuss here. Giants, Vikings, Bucks, Cowboys.
Yeah, the Giants-Vikings is really interesting for me because they played earlier in the year and the Vikings won that game 27-24 on a 61-yard field goal. But during that game, a lot of people don't understand that the Giants had a punt block that was returned for a touchdown. They also turned over the ball twice in that game. So there was a ton of mistakes. And so when they're looking at this game, they're saying, hey, look, if we just take care of the football and run the ball effectively with Saquon Barkley, get pressure on Kirk Cousins, we'll have an opportunity because Vikings, you just never know what team's going to show up. No. It's feast or famine throughout the course of the year. And you know if they win the ball game, it's going to probably be a 1-score game and it's going to be tight. So they've got to stay in the fight for 4 quarters and they'll have an opportunity to win at the end for the Giants.
I'm saying Giants, Phil, because I think that they will they are a little bit more potent defensively, in my estimation. And as a result, they'll be able to weather the storm of Danny Dimes' miscues.
I think the Vikings might be one of the worst 13-win teams of all time? I'm not a believer. And they've won 13 games, and yet, guys, this is a wild stat to me, and yet, for the season, they had a negative 3-point differential. They somehow won 13 games. That to me speaks to a lot of luck over the course of the season. And so I'm going with my coach of the year, Brian Daboll, on this one.
Can Tom Brady and the Bucs knock off the Cowboys at home? I mean, we've seen so much ineptitude from Tampa Bay, and so often that they'll play for the final 4 minutes after 56 minutes of absolute, abject, disastrous-looking offense. They could beat Dallas, but I also, in my mind's eye, can envision Tom Brady under siege.
He could be under siege. I think, though, also when you look at Dallas, you're talking about a Dallas Cowboy team that's reeling right now, and they have no momentum going in. They just got stomped out by the Washington Commanders last week. Dak Prescott has been a turnover-prone quarterback all year long. They haven't been able to get the running game going, and their defense, for as good as they were early on the season, has not created the same amount of pressure. They've had injuries in their secondary. So I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are primed to take this game at home against a team that, when they have the star on their helmet, there's so much pressure, and there's no team that has more pressure year in, year out than the Dallas Cowboys, because everybody thinks they're always going to somehow screw it up.
The one thing I would worry about is Micah Parsons against this Bucs offensive line and pressuring Tom Brady and forcing him to get rid of the football more quickly than maybe he wants to. It just, to me, that's sort of been the story of their season. Is it just felt like Brady hasn't been protected, and that even he as an individual hasn't wanted to be hit, which I totally get. 45 years old, like, and he's the entire hopes and dreams of his team rest on his shoulders. Like, you probably should be playing it that way in the regular season, but it just feels like pressure has been the story of their year, and they've become at times a really easy team to defend because they can't protect. And so that's what I would worry about against a really good pass rushing team. It's not just Parsons. They've been, in terms of pressure rate, they've been at the top of the league for pretty much the entire year.
And they're so reliant on Leonard Fournette and their running game to get things going, which I love, because when he does get going, he is an absolute beast, and he's tearing off 6, 7, and 8 yard runs when he gets hit 2 yards in. But it also puts Tommy in 2nd and 10 once in a while, and that's been a bad spot because he just has not seemed to be on the same page. That was fun. We got a lot done, and we got a lot more to get done next week as the Patriots plow forward. We appreciate you guys. I don't think we're going to be doing any more Patriots Talk podcasts on television, but we'll still be out there on the audio file.
We'll still be there.
Terrific season.
Terrific season.